Hey guys, Scripture here with another video. I wanted to talk about the theory about the Bad Batch, and this one, I'm covering this because I think this actually might be exactly what's happening. I would not be surprised at all, and it does make things kind of weird, to be perfectly honest. So, let's get into this. One key storyline of the Bad Batch Season 3 may have offered an even more incredible reveal about Rey's origins than The Rise of Skywalker. I don't know if I'd say incredible at all. Although Season 3 of The Bad Batch takes place decades before the sequel trilogy, the show has massive implications throughout the franchise. Set during the Dark Times, not long after Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, The Bad Batch has already done considerable work to explore what happened in the wake of Order 66 and set the stage for what's to come. In doing so, The Bad Batch Season 3 has offered some incredible reveals, many of which have direct implications for the events of the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Although the plot twist of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker that Rey was in fact a descendant of Emperor Palpatine took many viewers completely by surprise. One key Star Wars storyline that could very well be revealing an even more jarring family connection, specifically based on the Bad Batch's exploration of Palpatine's cloning plans. Additional details about Rey's origins have been revealed. The story of Rey's parents in Star Wars is key to understanding Rey's character, such as the reason why she's not truly Palpatine's granddaughter. Although Rey's parentage may have remained the mystery for the bulk of the Star Wars sequel trilogy, The Rise of Skywalker eventually revealed that Rey was a Palpatine by blood via her father Dathan. However, her father wasn't a traditional biological son of Emperor Palpatine. In the movie, little information is provided. The movie quickly shows Rey's emotional goodbye to her parents as they leave her behind on Jakku. Yeah, we know all that. However, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker novelization, written by Ray Carson, provided significant additional context. The book revealed that Dathan was actually a strand-cast clone of Palpatine, meaning that Dathan had been created from both Palpatine's DNA and DNA from other sources. What is most interesting about this, though, is the ambiguity of these other DNA sources. It isn't clear where else Dathan's genetic material comes from, so the possibilities remain wide open. One such possibility is particularly exciting and even seems quite possible. Bad Batch Season 3 has revealed how critical Omega is to Project Necromancer and Palpatine's resurrection plan. Project Necromancer, taking place on Mount Tantiss, is the plot behind Palpatine's eventual return. The plan hinges on the Empire's ability to produce Force-sensitive clones of Palpatine. However, they have come to discover that such an endeavor is particularly difficult. Although they have the aid of the Kaminoan scientists, the very ones who were behind the creation of the prequel trilogy's clone army, creating Force-sensitive clones is quite different. Now, I want to just say something really quick here. Like, people who were all, freaking out about the midichlorian issue, I mean, is this not a whole other level of that? Like this is like extreme getting into the midichlorian science side of it. I just find that kind of funny that there's a lot of people that think the midichlorian thing was dumb and this and that and the other thing, and Disney's not doing that. They're going a different direction. It's better. Rey's a nobody. Remember all of those people? Now, not only is she not a nobody, but they're actually going so heavy into the midichlorian and creating Force-sensitive part of it that it's actually laughable at this point. Like, I was fine with midichlorians being there. It's kind of a simple way to kind of explain certain things. I didn't mind it at all. But then Disney went the route that anyone can be a Jedi. They've got Sabine and all that stuff going on, which it creates huge problems, of course, because if anyone could be a Jedi, then there should have been even more Jedi, or they should have recruited even more people, but they specifically chose specific people, specific children that were Force sensitive. So they're going that road of everyone can be a Jedi, but also going this road where we gotta have the midichlorians and we gotta clone and it's gotta be this, it's gotta be that. So it's kind of a muddied mess. To do so, the Empire discovered they needed to increase the M count of a clone and bring together both a clone specimen and a Force sensitive specimen. Disturbingly, the Empire found the latter quite simple. The Bad Batch Season 3 has revealed that the Empire abducted multiple Force-sensitive children and is holding them prisoner and testing upon them in the Vault, a hidden base in their facility. So far, though, Omega is the only clone whose midichlorian count has confirmed to have successfully increased through these experiments. In light of that, Omega is seemingly the key to the entire project, as the Empire has identified that both elements, a clone capable of sustaining an increased midichlorian count and a Force-sensitive specimen, are required. Project Necromancer could not go on without her. This also means that At least at the current point in time, Omega is the only viable genetic option thus far. It's quite possible, therefore, that Dathan's genetic material may very well come from Omega. It's clear throughout the Bad Batch Season 3 that the Project Necromancer experiments have undergone significant trial and error without success until Omega arrived. Given how many clones were unsuccessfully tested upon, this suggests that Omega is a true anomaly. Moreover, the Empire did manage to get their hands on Omega's blood even after her first successful escape, meaning her DNA is both viable and available to the Empire. Okay, whatever. While it's possible the genetic material came from elsewhere or another viable clone specimen emerged, Star Wars has yet to show that. At least for now, the Bad Batch seems to point to Omega as the source of the DNA crucial to Project Necromancer. What makes this particularly compelling is that the Bad Batch has just one episode before the show's conclusion. There may be another Star Wars TV show project that will further explore the progress, the final details of Project Necromancer, but it seems telling that the Bad Batch is wrapping up on this note. Rey's dad's a Strand cast, and he's not Force sensitive. He was a failure, right? That's the story. He's a failure, and so Palpatine was going to kill him or get rid of him. Didn't want him anymore, and he somehow got away, and then went and had a baby, and then, I don't know, I guess they found out about it, or I don't know, whatever. But at the end of the day, if her blood is used to make Dathan, and he was a failed clone, how did Rey become Force sensitive? Like, if he doesn't have the Force in him, if he doesn't have the midichlorians in him, how would she get them? It skips a generation, I guess. Like, the whole thing is discombobulated. Were Omega indeed the source of Dathan's additional genetic material, that would mean Rey was not only a Palpatine by blood, but she was also a descendant of Omega. In fact, this would be a truly incredible turn, because it would mean that Rey had a genetic link to Omega, but also to all the clones, Boba Fett and his father, Jango Fett, the original specimen as well. This would have considerable and fascinating effects on the larger Star Wars timeline, as it would unify stories that have already been told in a brand new way. We're getting the Palpatine saga now. That's what they're doing. Remember, I told you guys they're going to spend years explaining that one silly decision they made to bring Palpatine back, and try and bring in revenue for a long time, trying to explain that one plot point that should have just been explained in the movies.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
The other thing too is, like, what about Rey is this meant to explain? Like, what about what in her character is this supposed to explain? Is this supposed to explain her, like, incredibly ridiculous Force powers with no training? Because Palpatine needed training. Palpatine was brought up in it, and again, Dathan didn't have the Force, so I don't understand what this is supposed to explain about Rey, other than to say, if she's linked to now Omega and the clones and Boba Fett and Jango Fett, they're just piling on the entirety of Star Wars and all of their stories into Rey. It's essentially saying, well, now when you see Boba Fett on screen, you'll remember Rey. Now when you see Jango Fett on screen, you'll remember Rey. You know all those clones? Hey, there's a connection with Rey. Hey, Omega, you really like Omega the character? You really like the Bad Batch? Well, guess what? Rey. Like, and that's why I think that this is probably true, because it's just Rey. Everything is about Rey, and it would make sense that they would go this route as well, because they're working on the Rey movie, I guess, right? Apparently. And so having that revelation is somehow going to make Rey a more interesting character, I think, in their minds. It's just, she's not interesting enough. We made her way too OP, and she doesn't have a good story arc, so we're gonna just pile on all this stuff to force the audience into thinking she's cool and being interested in her character. Again, it's a bold strategy, but I don't know if it's going to work. That would mean Rey was not only a Palpatine by blood, but also that she was a descendant of Omega. This would also make quite a bit of sense for Star Wars to do. The franchise has long since grappled with how to walk back somewhat or soften the abruptness of Palpatine's return in The Rise of Skywalker. An equally clunky line, somehow Palpatine returned, is the only explanation for the startling resurrection in the movie. Moreover, many are still displeased that this was Rey's origin story after all. The possibility that Rey is related to Omega and the amount of work that would have gone into making that so would more than compensate. But the whole thing is, we know none of this was planned. So they're just winging it. And I'm getting like creepy eugenics vibes. Like, they got slaves and stuff, and child, kidnapped children, Force-sensitive children imprisoned and all this stuff. They had an entire trilogy. Their main character, Rey, is in this entire trilogy, but then you've essentially now relegated the backstory of the main protagonist of your franchise now. And again, you're lumping all this stuff in, so you're trying to make her the main protagonist of your franchise. And you've relegated her backstory to an animated TV streaming show where she's related through weird experiments and child kidnapping and all this stuff, which again doesn't make sense because Dathan, it just doesn't make sense. But I only wanted to talk about this because this is something I think they will totally do. They will totally do this. And you start thinking about it, this would also mean that Rey is the granddaughter of Omega, but through some sick, twisted cloning program by the Empire where they abduct kids and imprison them, and all because somehow Palpatine returned. Sounds awesome. And it really improves Rey's character as well. Like, it's just... While this remains only a theory, it is a compelling one. Rey's lineage has remained a hot topic in the franchise, and with the Bad Batch wrapping up, this would be one avenue of many to continue exploring those characters' stories, although the truth remains to be seen. For now, it's possible that Omega provided the genetic material for Dathan. I think that makes the most sense. What are they going to do? Pull in some new guy in the last episode that no one even knows who he is, and that's going to be the answer? It looks to me like this is what they're going to do. They're going to do it in the Bad Batch. I think it makes sense from the way they think. It doesn't make sense to me, as I've already outlined, but I think it makes sense from the way that they think. But what do you guys think? Like, is this going to make Rey more interesting? Does it make you care about the Rey movie more? Does the issue with Dathan having no Force sensitivity raise questions about just the entire thing if they're being related to Palpatine, even without Omega, right? It still doesn't matter. It's still kind of weird, right? You know, again, what do you think about the fact that, you know, they had 3 movies over 6 hours of film, and they couldn't explain the main villain, the main antagonist in the end's backstory. They couldn't explain the secondary villain, Snoke's backstory in the films. Other than he was just like a test tube baby, right? I guess they kind of explained it, but not really. They don't do a good job of explaining Luke and his backstory in the films. They didn't get to Poe's backstory until a couple of lines of dialogue in The Rise of Skywalker. They didn't flesh out the characters in the trilogy with all that footage and all that time. And now you're trying to flesh your main antagonist and your main protagonist out in a cartoon on a streaming service instead of the movies that you had. So I'm not going to reward them and be like, oh, this is super interesting because they screwed up and then they're just making stuff up on the fly now to try and, again, make Rey an interesting character by just making her attached to literally everything. Literally everything in Star Wars. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if, in the end, they somehow maneuver in her movie that she's the real chosen one, right? That's probably the next thing they're going to do. Because until she's an interesting character, they're just going to keep throwing crap at the wall. They're just going to keep putting her into everything. So again, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. If you like this content, please like, subscribe, always helps the channel. Check out anything else on my channel, and have yourselves a really good day.